Story 1. In the fall of 2005, my significant other and I bought our first house together. We were happy, with a baby on the way. The house was cute, located in a new subdivision, and a homeowners association had just been formed. Our place was at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, with no traffic and nice neighbors. About 3 years later, the U.S. economy took a nosedive, and over half the homes in our subdivision were either foreclosed or in the process of being foreclosed. We stopped paying on our mortgage, moved out, and a family friend and his family moved in. They had lost their house, so he paid us a discounted rent, which we used to maintain the house since we weren't paying the mortgage. The homeowners association was struggling to maintain the common areas and keep things clean due to a lack of funds. Junky cars and dead or dying landscaping were everywhere, and one home had burned down to its foundation. A few months after my friend moved in, the curbs of all the cul-de-sacs in the subdivision were painted red to designate them as fire lanes. I was furious because it prevented street parking in front of the house. Anytime I needed to stop by to fix something, or if my tenant had a guest, we had to park in front of a neighbor's house, or in the common collector streets and walk in. I called the local fire department to ask why they needed so many fire lanes, especially since there were no hydrants nearby. They told me they hadn't requested additional fire lanes, nor had they asked for the curbs to be painted. They explained that anyone could paint a curb red, but it was the signage or a hydrant's presence that made it a legal fire lane. The paint was just there to help interpret the signage. Sure enough, there were no signs. It turned out to be a ploy by the homeowners association to drum up more funds. If they painted curbs red and called it a safety zone, their bylaws allowed them to fine a homeowner for violating the safety zone. Funny enough, the homeowners association president lived at the end of one of the cul-de-sacs, and now the neighbors could no longer park in front of her house without getting safety zone fines. One evening, just past twilight, I put on a high-vis vest, safety glasses, and work boots, and I painted over the red curb with boring gray paint, specifically designed for concrete with great coverage. I did the entire cul-de-sac. 3 weeks later, it was red again. 2 days later, I painted it gray again. 5 weeks later, it was red again. Then I painted it gray with a silicone top sealer. Then red again, which flaked off almost immediately. The homeowners association painted it red once more, but it flaked again. Finally, they put up a sign that read, "Safety Zone No Parking." The house was now under notification of foreclosure, and I was working with an agency to help navigate and file all the paperwork needed so we could short sell. Short selling in this context meant that although we had promised to pay the bank $350,000 plus interest for the house, they would forgive any remaining amount we owed as long as we turned the house over in good condition, for example, not flushing concrete down the toilets or poking pinholes in the water pipes. It wasn't ideal, but it was better than owing $350,000 on a house worth only $165,000 that would be legally taken from us soon. Thanks a lot, Reagan. I'm still waiting for that trickle-down effect. During a short sale, you're required to notify any potential parties that could have liens on the house. This includes the homeowners association. I was up to date on my dues and had no outstanding violations, so I thought I was in the clear. But no, the homeowners association suddenly came up with a whole list of violations that hadn't been addressed or remedied for 5 months, plus additional fines for the delay. They claimed they notified me in November, but they couldn't produce copies of these multiple notices of violation. They only had the current one from March, listing all the outstanding violations. Examples included black stains on the driveway, an uncoiled garden hose, an unapproved tree, a missing bush, missing foliage, and a dead tree. I informed them that the stains were tire marks from driving into the garage. The unapproved tree was one they had actually approved. The missing bushes were also approved for removal. I even provided a copy of the plan and their approvals with their name on it. It wasn't my fault they didn't remember what they had approved. As for the dead tree, many trees tend to lose leaves in the fall, like around November. They might look dead if you're just making up violations in February, but they're usually just dormant, waiting for spring. Even if it was dead, you can't replace a tree in November, December, January, or February. No nurseries sell saplings that late in the season unless you want a Yuletide tree. How could someone be reasonably expected to replace a dead tree in the off-season? The Homeowners Association delayed responding, and the short sale was on a timer. If I didn't have all legal items, payments for liens, and documents into the escrow officer by a certain date, the short sale would fall through, and I'd owe $350,000 plus interest on a $165,000 house that was soon to be foreclosed on. The Homeowners Association fines and fees totaled $1,955, just $1.45 short of where felony fraud starts. I was livid. The Homeowners Association was going to mess with me one last time, and I'd have to pay for the experience. So I talked to the escrow officer and asked what she needed. She told me, "Only the money for the Homeowners Association lien, and you'll close escrow tomorrow." She had seen reams of these come through with similar amounts of fines requested by homeowners associations that held up short sales. None exceeded $2,000. I asked her what form of payment would satisfy her as an escrow officer. She said, "Money order, cash, or check. A check would be easiest for you, don't you think?" I confirmed. "If I write a check to the Homeowners Association for $1,955 and hand it to you, that'll satisfy escrow?" she replied. "Yes," I told her. "You'll have a check in 25 minutes. The next day, I was on the phone with the escrow officer, sitting in my car in a parking lot at 9:01 and I asked, "Did the documents record? Did the short sale go through?" She answered, "Yes. I'll mail out finalized documents and any other items before the close of business today." I thanked her, hung up, walked into the local branch of my bank, and informed the teller, "I need to place a stop payment on a check." Story 2. This is from 2011. Anyone who has seen my posts knows I used to work in the private security field. Not as mall cops, but as highly trained, skilled, and armed security officers. We worked in residential buildings and complexes that were very high-end, with $200,000 cars in the parking garages. Now, places like this are Karen Central. Imagine apartments full of entitled individuals and their equally entitled teenagers. The company owner was awesome. He was a police officer as his regular job, so he understood what we faced. His advice was to be nice, but to put the hammer down if necessary and not to take their nonsense. He even joked that if we didn't get 2 complaints a month about us for trivial things, we weren't engaging with the residents enough. This is important to the story. Each supervisor had 10-15 properties under their control. Regular officers patrolled them, but we were in charge of helping with evictions, attending town halls on security issues, deciding how officers patrolled, and updating which areas were problematic or needed more attention. I had 12 properties. At one particular apartment complex, we had a couple who always called us. We had an emergency line open from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., and whenever we got there, they would complain about their upstairs neighbor. They would list various issues like stomping, loud music, talking, cooking smells, or their neighbor's dog urinating on the balcony, causing it to drip onto theirs. Valid complaints if we found evidence, but we never did. When they realized we were starting to question the validity of their complaints, they changed tactics and went racist. The couple above them was a sweet and wonderful middle-aged Asian couple. The husband was an immigrant, but the wife was born and raised in America. These racists had only spoken to the husband, so they assumed, as all racists do, that they were both immigrants. This couple started making comments like, "Those Asians," and "They are in America. Why can't they cook American food?" Or, "I'm afraid to be in the parking garage when one of them is driving." While these comments angered me, they weren't enough for an eviction. The only thing I could do was instruct my officers to include the exact phrasing in their reports. I did ask the property manager about these comments, and she said that if they didn't say them directly to the residents and the residents didn't complain, there wasn't much she could do. So, I tried to think of a way to get them evicted. Not only were they lying to get a couple evicted, but they were also calling in false complaints and wasting the officers' time. They didn't just call every once in a while, They called sometimes twice in one night, usually 5-8 times a week. About a month later, an opportunity presented itself. The Asian couple called me during the day and informed me they were going out of the country to China for 2 weeks, and no one would be in their apartment. They told me this just in case the other couple started complaining, so I would know they were lying, and they asked me to check their door once a night to make sure it was locked and hadn't been broken into. I informed the Asian couple not to tell their neighbors that they were leaving and to only inform the property manager and me. That night, we had a patrol meeting. Officers didn't work in one specific region, so I told them all my plan. I wanted them to respond each time this couple called and to write down exactly what they said happened, including any racial terms, no matter how minor. They were to mark the report as urgent and send it out. We had an online system for all business communications, emails, schedules, report submissions. You get the idea. So, the plan was set in motion. During those 14 days, the couple complained 18 times. Everything was documented, and I took it to the property manager. She reviewed the reports and decided to proceed with eviction. Side note, the client gets charged more for emergency responses than they do for regular patrols, so their lies were also costing money. Since there was no homeowners association because these were rentals, the situation required myself, the property manager, and the tenants to sit down at a table. The charges for eviction were read. If the eviction was related to security issues, I would state which violations had been broken, strictly based on facts from the reports, not opinions. The tenants would receive a copy of the reports, then have the right to speak and ask questions. The property manager would then decide the next steps, whether the tenants would stay or be evicted. The couple was sent a formal letter stating they were facing eviction and had 10 days to set up a meeting. If they didn't, the eviction would be processed. They set up the meeting. When I arrived, the unpleasant couple and the manager were already present. The wife immediately started criticizing me because I was armed. For situations like this, our uniforms consisted of a dress shirt, slacks, a tie, and one weapon. I politely informed her that it was my uniform, and it wasn't her decision to make. She tried to say she felt uncomfortable and wanted to reschedule, but the manager firmly stated, "This happens now, or I will evict you." So, they agreed to continue. For legal reasons, these sessions were recorded by video to ensure that tenants couldn't lie in eviction court or sue later. In front of me were all 18 reports, and I went over each one, detailing the time, date, who called, and the apartment number. I read out each line and asked them to tell me what they felt was false and what was true. The only thing they denied were the racial terms. At the end of each report, I confirmed the accuracy of the incidents, such as tenants in a specific apartment playing loud music, and asked if they claimed the comments about race were false. Each time, they answered yes. Around the 7th report, the wife started complaining that I was dragging it out. I just smiled politely and reminded her that this was my time, and she had ample opportunity to object and ask questions, but only after I was done. I then proceeded through the remaining reports, allowing them to build their defense. After getting them to admit to their lies, I informed them that the tenants in question had actually been out of the country during those 18 reports. The tenants provided proof of their absence, and my officers had checked the apartment once a night, confirming it was empty. I smiled pleasantly and ended my part, while their faces displayed a mix of anger and fear. They had no defense, resorting to claims that the manager and I were favoring immigrants over Americans. Oh, did I mention the manager is an immigrant? That comment went over like a lead balloon. When they said that, the manager immediately stopped the meeting and told them she was indeed an immigrant, which only made things worse. They accused her of taking up for her own kind. During this, I remained calm and collected, though inside I was thinking, this is bad. After a few more racial remarks, the manager halted the discussion and declared them guilty, stating she would process the eviction paperwork with the courts in the morning. Long story short, they were given 14 days to vacate, but from what I heard, the judge extended it to 30 days until they called him a racial name. I was able to call the nice Asian couple and let them know it was over. They didn't have to worry anymore because we would no longer respond to calls about their apartment for the next 14 days until the eviction was finalized and the problematic tenants left. However, they were welcome to call anytime if they needed help or had any issues. Security officers want to help so badly, but are often limited by either laws, property management rules, or both, so it's nice to be able to do some good when the opportunity arises. Story 3. This happened about 4 years ago, when I was 18, working for a security company. There were constant call-offs and no-shows, though I have no idea why. Being young and naive, I often found myself working 16-hour shifts and not getting home until 8 a.m. At that time, I was living with my father. This story takes place around the 4th of July. I finally had a day off, and my best friend was back in town for vacation. We decided to chip in and get some good all-American fireworks. To be fair, I'd had nothing but bad experiences with fireworks, so I had no idea how this time would be any different. We got home with the fireworks and laid them all out on the floor. Sparklers, bottle rockets, cakes, and Roman candles. I said, "Why don't we mess around with some sparklers since it's still not dark yet?" Great idea, right? We went into my backyard, where it hadn't rained in over 2 months, and it was extremely dry. You see where this is going? One of the little sparks from our sparklers made contact with the ground and started 2 small fires that quickly spread. I ran as fast as I could to grab the garden hose and started spraying down the fire. It was no use. The fire was spreading faster than I could spray it. I handed my friend the hose and called 911. What felt like hours was only 4 minutes, and the fire was spreading to the neighbor's fence. The neighbor came outside, surprisingly calm, and grabbed their hose to spray down the fence and the dead grass in her yard. The fire department finally showed up, and I told my friend, "Only one of us needs to get in trouble. You should leave." He was reluctant because he felt equally responsible, but I convinced him to go. I didn't want him to get in trouble and have to drop out of college. At first, my neighbor was super chill about the whole situation. I told her we could talk about replacing the fence and get some quotes for the repair. She was just grateful that everyone was okay. About 2 hours after the fire, the arson fire investigator came to question me. I told him the truth, that I was in the backyard by myself, playing with fireworks, and accidentally lit the ground on fire. I got off without any charges and was commended for being honest. Now, here's where things go downhill fast. About a week later, I got a knock on the door from the neighbor. She handed me 2 pieces of paper to look at. There was a quote for the fence, valued at around $4,000, and an estimate for lawn care, valued around $6,000. These were really shady and just typed out on a Microsoft Word document, no logo or company name. She then added, "I will also be having you pay my water bill for 3 months because the new yard will need lots of water." Now, the fence this woman had before was raggedy and falling apart. Her yard? Dead grass, weeds everywhere, never mowed. But now, she wanted a mahogany fence and a brand new backyard with flowers and trimmed hedges. I said, "I need to get an estimate myself, this doesn't feel right." She replied, "Remember, you agreed to replace my fence, and a real man keeps his promises." I shut the door and called my dad to tell him what had just happened. He flipped out and told me, "Son, don't you give that woman a single dime." He gave me the number to his handyman and told me to take care of it. The next day, I had the handyman come out for an estimate, and the neighbor ran outside, flailing her arms. "I did not give you permission to get an estimate on my fence." Technically, it separated the property line, so it was both of our fences. She called the cops on me for having a contractor, but they couldn't do anything because I was on my property. The handyman quickly finished the estimate at wanting $200. I also knew a guy who did lawn care from my time working at a grocery store. He estimated the lawn reseeding while she was away from the house to be about $800. After I got these estimates, I gave copies to the neighbor, but she wasn't having any of it. "I don't know these people. I don't want them near my house. They're probably really bad contractors." I said, "No, I know them personally. They're really nice people and do great work." She shut the door in my face, and I went on my way. I ended up working a 16-hour shift that night and got home at 8, and the woman came knocking on my door at 9 a.m., demanding I speak to her. I explained, I would really love to do this, but I just got home, and I have to be back at work in less than 5 hours. I need to sleep. She replied, what kind of lazy person sleeps in until 2 p.m.? At this point, I had about lost it and told her, you can either accept my $2,000 for my quotes or forget about it and get nothing. She stood there for a while with her mouth gaping open, but she accepted my offer and planned to meet at the notary the next morning. I spent that night after work writing a contract and gathering the $2,000 in cash. The next morning, I woke up, grabbed the contract, and went to meet her at the notary. I was thrilled to finally be done with her and never speak to her again. I waited for over 3 hours, and she didn't show up. Then I got a call from her saying, I'm sorry, but $2,000 isn't enough. I'm having my guys start work on this project, and you will be paying me the full price. Oh, really? After that, I didn't say another word to her and watched for months as these guys turned her backyard into an oasis, complete with a small pond, brand new sod, flowers, the whole 9 yards. Come to find out, she had plans to remodel these things for a long time and was just waiting for the opportunity to go through with it. Also, during this time, she used her remodel funds to go on a trip to Hawaii. You know how I found out? She was bragging about it on the neighborhood Facebook group and didn't know I was in it. I use a different Facebook name than my real name. Are you ready for the revenge? About 4 months after the fire and all the remodels, I got served papers to go to court for $2,300. At 18 years old, I had to hire a lawyer to work my case. When we finally got to court, I laid everything out, the quotes, being harassed multiple times, her not showing up after agreeing to a deal, not wanting me to get my own quotes, which is required by law, by the way, and her bragging about scamming me out of money. I had proof of all of this. The judge looked at her and said, Ma'am, with all due respect, you're out of your mind. Not only did this young man tell the truth about what happened, but he also offered to pay you more than he was supposed to. Your lawn was already dead before the fire occurred, so he is only responsible for the fence, which is $200. I will also deduct his lawyer fees from this amount. $800. So, I burned this woman's fence down, and all I had to give her was $400. Cool. She took a huge financial loss from this. I'm not sure how much the Hawaii trip cost her, but she was in serious debt. She ended up having to sell the house because of it and moved into a smaller place. I haven't heard anything from her since. Story 4. I've been going to the gym regularly for a couple of years now. I love keeping fit, and the gym has become like a second home to me. But I had no idea that one particular day would go down in our gym's history as the day a Karen got knocked out. It all started like any other regular day at the gym. The place was buzzing with energy. I grabbed my water bottle, put on my favorite workout playlist, and began my warm-up routine. As I made my way to the bench press, I noticed a new face, a lady who seemed to think she owned the place, but not in a good way. You know the type. She was loudly grunting as she attempted a set of squats. But it wasn't her grunting that caught my attention. It was the fact that she was guarding the weights and dumbbells like they were her personal property. Every time someone approached to use one, she'd scowl and say, "Don't you dare touch those. I'm still using them between sets." I rolled my eyes but decided not to engage with her. I found a nearby bench to do my presses and started my workout. But Miss Entitled didn't stop there. Oh no, she had her sights set on me, the guy using her bench. I didn't realize she was holding 2 benches hostage at the same time. As I began my bench presses, she stormed over with a nasty scowl on her face. "Excuse me," she yelled, making everyone nearby turn their heads. "I was using that bench. You need to wait for me to finish." I didn't want any trouble, so I replied, "Sorry, but there are plenty of other benches available. I'll be done in a few minutes, and you can use it then." "Unbelievable," she huffed, crossing her arms. "You people think you can just take whatever you want." I pay for this gym membership, you know. Trying to keep my cool, I told her again. I'll be done in a moment, ma'am. Just give me a few more minutes. Plus, it seems that you already have one bench at your disposal over there. Why are you berating me over this one? She gave me a nasty look, as if I had said the most ridiculous thing ever, and then said, "First, it's none of your business. And second, I do different types of exercises on each bench." Hearing this, I couldn't help but mutter, "What the heck? That's just nonsense." But she wasn't having it. By the way, I forgot to mention that I had my girlfriend with me at the gym, doing her workout plan for the day. And let me tell you, my girlfriend is not someone you'd want to mess with. I could tell she was getting increasingly agitated by the way Karen was treating people. As the entitled lady kept bothering everyone, including me, my girlfriend walked up to her and said calmly, "Hey, why don't you chill out? We're all here to work out and share the equipment." Karen wasn't about to back down. She glared at my girlfriend and snapped, "This doesn't concern you. Mind your own business." My girlfriend took a deep breath, clearly trying to keep her composure, and said, "It's everyone's business when you're making a scene and ruining the gym's atmosphere. Let's just get back to our workouts, okay?" Karen ignored my girlfriend completely and decided to walk up to me while I was flat on my back doing my bench presses. She picked up the heaviest dumbbell she could lift and threatened me, saying, "If you don't stop right now and walk away from my bench, I'll drop this dumbbell on your face. You hear me?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. That was the last straw for me and clearly for many others nearby. No one should ever threaten someone else at the gym or anywhere else, for that matter. The atmosphere had turned tense, and everyone was on edge. As Karen raised the dumbbell threateningly, my girlfriend sprang into action. In a flash, she grabbed the dumbbell from Karen's hand and knocked it to the side, safely away from anyone. Then, with a swift, powerful punch, she delivered a knockout blow to the side of Karen's head, and Karen crumpled to the floor, unconscious. I got up and stood there, dumbfounded, watching as Karen lay on the ground. My girlfriend stood over her, arms folded, with an expression of anger on her face. It didn't take long for the gym staff to arrive, along with a few concerned members who had witnessed the altercation. The gym manager called the police to sort things out and review the security footage. When the cops arrived, they took statements from several witnesses, including me. I explained what had happened and how Karen had been behaving rudely and threateningly before getting knocked out. The security footage backed up our stories, clearly showing Karen's aggressive behavior. As they waited for the ambulance to arrive, my girlfriend looked at me and smiled. "I'm really sorry you had to witness that. It's just, I can't stand bullies and entitled people ruining everyone's experience." I nodded, still amazed by how she handled the situation. "No need to apologize. You did what you had to do, and honestly, it was kind of impressive." The police gathered enough evidence and testimonies to take action, and Karen was taken away in an ambulance. Clearly, she had brought it upon herself by being so entitled and aggressive. I mean, you can't just threaten someone by saying you'll drop a dumbbell on their head like that. If someone were to drop a heavy dumbbell on another person while they were performing exercises like the bench press, the potential for serious injuries is significant. A dumbbell falling from a height could cause fractures, broken bones, or even concussions, depending on the impact and the individual's position. Any injury to the head and neck region can be life-threatening. It could literally lead to traumatic brain injuries, spinal cord injuries, and other life-altering complications. In my opinion, the gym is a place where people come to better themselves physically and mentally, and everyone deserves to feel safe and supported. Threatening or engaging in violent behavior not only endangers others, but also goes against the very spirit of the gym community. At least, that's what I believe. Anyway, the rest of the day at the gym went smoothly, with everyone focusing on their workouts and sharing the equipment as usual. People chatted about the incident, but mostly they were in awe of my girlfriend's swift reaction to put an end to Karen's entitled behavior. As for Karen, I heard she got banned from the gym after the incident. I decided to press charges against her for threatening my life the way she did. As the legal process unfolded, Karen was charged with assault, making criminal threats, and disorderly conduct. The evidence against her was strong, including the security footage capturing the entire incident. It was clear that she had acted aggressively and recklessly, putting lives at risk. During the trial, Karen's defense tried to downplay her actions, claiming she was only venting her frustration and didn't mean any harm. However, the testimonies and the security footage painted a different picture. Her threatening gestures and aggressive behavior left no doubt about her intent to harm. As a result of the trial, Karen was sentenced to 3 years in prison and mandatory counseling for anger management. The judge clearly took into account the severity of the threats, and the dumbbell in this setting was considered a deadly weapon. As for me, I'm just glad I'm on the good side of my girlfriend. That one is surely a keeper, and this story will serve as a reminder to never get on her bad side. Story 5. When this story took place, I was just about to turn 14. I was entering my 8th grade year, and this would be my 4th and final year playing club lacrosse before the college recruiting process began. At the time, I played for a club called RL. It wasn't the best club in the area, but I chose to play there for 2 reasons. 1. I wanted to lead a team. I was good enough to be a second or third option on many other top-tier clubs in the area I play defense, but I wanted to be a captain and have the responsibility of taking on the other team's #1 option. 2. The co-owners of the club were the head coach and defensive coordinator of the high school I was set to attend in a year. If I performed well with them in the club scene, I would have a much higher chance of playing on the varsity team. Going back a bit, I joined this club when I was 9, just before my 5th grade year. My club only ran during 2 seasons, summer and fall, with training sessions in the winter, but no actual competition. I never played a summer season for the club because I would go to a sports-oriented sleepaway camp to work on my skills. I also played football and swam. Yet, I was always the #1 defenseman when I played, and my coach constantly urged me to play over the summer. I always politely declined. This is crucial information for the story to come. Now, on to the story. About 2 weeks before the start of 8th grade, I went out for tryouts. I'd done this many times before. To me, it was a glorified practice. I would beat up on all the newcomers to see who would be the best fit for the team. My coach even asked me which kids were the toughest to defend. I felt fantastic and left the tryout as happy as could be. A week later, emails went out to parents about who had made the team. I pestered my parents all weekend about the email, but it never came. This was unusual, but I understood the delay. Lots of kids tried out this time around, and they were probably having trouble sorting through them all. Finally, 4 days after the emails were supposed to be sent out, I received mine. It was a 2-sentence email from the owner of the program, the head coach of my town's high school team that I mentioned before. It read, "We regret to inform you that your child has not made the RL roster for the 2015-2016 season. Better luck next year." I was crushed. I had put so much into this program. I had been the captain for the past 2 years. I couldn't fathom how this could have happened. In a panic, I called the only person I could think of, the other co-owner. He was technically not responsible for my age group, but he was a mentor to me. He was the defensive coordinator I mentioned earlier and had been grooming me to be his star defender for years. What he told my parents and me made me sick. "I've got some bad news," he said. "Joel, the other owner, got fired as the head coach of X high school. I'm taking his place. He's struggling with money right now, so he only rostered kids who were willing to pay to play both fall and summer ball. I'm so sorry. I'll see what I can do to get you on the team." After hearing this, I declined his offer. I no longer wanted to play for Joel. I never wanted to see him ever again. 1 year later. By this point, the coach I talked to on the phone, Marcus, had started his own program, and I happily accepted the first captainship in the team's history. I was now playing summer ball for Marcus, and our first tournament was rapidly approaching. It was the summer of 2016, the summer before my freshman year, and I was fired up. This was my first time back in the club circuit since I'd been cut, and you wouldn't believe the first team we played. Marcus's team versus RL was the kickoff game of the tournament. I took the field, matched up against all of the boys I had led just a year ago, and I was furious. I think my stats in that game were something like 12 strips, 8 balls batted, 2 assists, and a coast-to-coast goal, the best stat line of my career to this day. We wiped the floor with my old team, 17-7. I received the game ball. Hyped up on adrenaline and freshly renewed anger, I stormed over to RL's tent, where all of my old teammates were gathered, being debriefed by the coach. I interrupted, walked over, and shook Joel's hand. I congratulated the team on a hard-fought battle. Thinking I must have forgotten the past, Joel treated me like a returning hero. "So, anything else you want to say to the team?" he asked. It couldn't have gone more perfectly. Delightedly, I told my teammates, as well as the parents, coaches, and other age groups of RL, exactly why I had traded my RL jersey for a Marcus one. I watched with glee as the color drained from Joel's face. I shook my friends' hands, invited them to tryouts for the next season's Marcus team, and walked away. At the next tryouts, I learned from my former teammates who had defected to Marcus that Joel had spiraled out of control. As more and more talent left the team, he became increasingly erratic. He stopped paying the bills for the turf lights, showed up to practice drunk, and worked the remaining kids into the ground in an attempt to make them ready to destroy Marcus the next time RL played us. RL shut down less than 6 months after my speech. The coaches quit, the talent left, and the money had long since dried up. I remain a captain of Marcus's team and am now a starter on the high school team Joel was fired from. As for Joel, I keep an eye on him. He recently lost his house, picked up his 3rd driving under the influence offense, and is currently serving an 18-month sentence in the state penitentiary.